And how much of a gap is there between like a pro account and like a Bloomberg terminal? Like I'm always fascinated at these companies that are trying to chip away at the Bloomberg terminals like dominant.
Yeah, I'm not going to be one of these people who goes on any show and say we have a Bloomberg killer. I've been hearing that trope for 20 years. There are many others that tried to emulate that, and some of them had great backing. They had backing from some of the biggest names on the street. I think Goldman backed a few of these Bloomberg killers in the past. But we're not a Bloomberg killer, right? The Bloomberg is used for any number of purposes. It's a world of difference, and it pains me every time I see someone claim to be the Bloomberg killer, because it just shows there's this ignorance around what actually Bloomberg services.
Hello, I'm Simon Owens, and this is The Business of Content, the show about how publishers create, distribute, and monetize their digital content. Founded in a Detroit garage in the early 2010s, Benzinga started as a scrappy finance blog for everyday stock market enthusiasts. Over the next decade, it grew into a major digital media platform, carving out a niche by sending detailed stock analysis directly to retail investors and major brokerage apps like Robinhood and Fidelity. Following a major acquisition by private equity in 2021, the company entered a new era of growth, hiring former Bloomberg editor Brad Olesen as its first chief content officer to bring its news, video, and data teams together under one roof. In a recent interview, Olsen broke down what it takes to run a modern multi-channel financial news operation, why Benzinga treats social media as a brand-building tool instead of a website traffic driver, and how the company balances free, ad-supported news with premium subscription products. If you want to listen to an audio version of this show, subscribe to The Business of Content wherever you get your podcast. And if you're watching this on YouTube, gently tap on that subscribe button so you can watch more interviews with the world's most successful media entrepreneurs. Okay, let's jump into the interview. Hey Brad, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So super excited to talk to you. You are, I believe, the chief content officer for a financial news media company called Benzinga. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
That's correct, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I really want to dive into what you do with them and just hear more about this company. I'll admit that I was less familiar with it. But first, I just love to hear about a little bit more your background before joining the company. Like you have like a very deep background in financial media, business media, stuff like that. So just give us a rundown of your previous jobs and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't set out to join the media world, I guess, but I guess you can't really dictate where your career takes you necessarily. But started my career in more of the investing oriented world. Found my way to a platform that was delivering actionable investing intelligence for hedge funds and trading groups. From there, left to join Bloomberg and was lucky enough to be both a columnist for their platform and also run a team that covered most of the equity and stock movements across the Western Hemisphere. Our remit was basically just trying to identify reasons why stocks were moving, what Wall Street was talking about at any given moment, their outlooks on where you should be investing, where you should be putting your money, properly trying to catalog and chronicle capitalism, as our old editor-in-chief used to say while I was there. Then had the privileged opportunity to join Seeking Alpha and kind of rebuild their news operation. From there, joined an RIA, a brokerage startup, and then from after that, found my way here to Benzinga. I've been talking with the Benzinga team for quite some time, where we were carried, our content is carried in basically every North American brokerage platform. So you'll find us on Fidelity and Robinhood and any major platform that you use. We're kind of, our distribution is kind of ubiquitous, but obviously we have our own branded content, so to speak, that lives on our website and through some of our subscription-oriented platforms. But we are kind of we serve millions of readers every single month through free newsletters, our website, and like I said, we have a couple subscription platforms that allow people to get that extra layer of intelligence that they need just to stay abreast of what's going on in the marketplace and how to protect their wealth.
Yeah, so that's what's kind of interesting about financial media is there's kind of this whole data information services arm of the financial sector, and then obviously there's more traditional news media, and then obviously Bloomberg is kind of the gold standard of kind of marrying those two things together, where it has like Bloomberg Media, and then it has, you know, the Bloomberg terminal, and Bloomberg Media kind of serves as kind of like a moat around that terminal to kind of protect it. And I know that Benzinga also offers kind of like these information and data services like that are a little bit more higher priced. So super excited to talk about that. So it sounds like you were working for like one of these data information type companies like a decade or so ago, and then that was kind of your segue into kind of more traditional media. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's about right. And I think what you nailed was correct. I think people think about news and media in one bucket, but financial media is a little bit different, because not only are you just trying to talk about what happened and find what's newsworthy and uncover, you know, nuggets of information and scoops, but you're also using that data to, you know, that widely accessible data to tell an interesting story, or to uncover stories that may not be immediately accessible. So you kind of wear an analyst hat and a journalist hat at the same time. And so that was kind of our job, was to kind of create that connection between what's happening overtly on the news side, and then tie that into, well, how's that going to impact the marketplace, and where should people be looking next for any of those reverberations that may happen from that piece of information.
So you joined Benzinga in, I think, 2022. It's not a very old company. I think it was founded in the early 2010s. Can you just give us a brief like history of, or at least as far as you know it, of the kind of company, like how it came to be, and basically its brief history before you came to join it?
Yeah, I think it's, I don't want to say it's an age-old story, but lore has it that the founder, Jason Rasley, started in his garage, and as basically just a blog for what was going on in the financial marketplace. And he wore a lot of hats and kind of bootstrapped the company from a very early stage, and it grew rapidly. Obviously, we're Detroit headquartered. We have our offices in downtown Detroit. The founder has a lot of ties to Michigan, and a lot of the individuals within that deep Detroit ecosystem grew rather rapidly, along with our Benzinga Pro product, which was kind of a nice little competitive, a lower priced competition to any of the Bloomberg competitors that are materially more expensive than others. And built kind of an events ecosystem. You know, we have our yearly FinTech awards that we do. We dabbled in all sorts of different verticals, whether it's crypto and cannabis, and ultimately over the years got large enough to attract the attention of private equity. In 2021, where, you know, the Beringer Capital acquired a majority stake in the business. I was brought on a couple months later, and since then, you know, we've had I would call a maturation of the business, where, you know, the company got to a sufficient size where, you know, things started to change, get a little bit more mature, bigger relationships were formed, and you know, that's the next stage of growth that we're in right now. It's just how do we, you know, lock arms with other parts of the industry, and we have our own proprietary data sets and our own special sauce to kind of speak to that retail investor, and that's where we are now.
Yeah, it was kind of born of this era when there were just like a lot of scrappy finance bloggers, and some of those people who were kind of weird and obsessed with markets and just blogging constantly and hanging out on Twitter all day. And then it sounds like his is one of those blogs that kind of started accruing a following, and then he was able to, I'm guessing early on he was just like using like programmatic advertising and stuff like that to monetize, and then was able to use the revenue from there to start kind of growing his staff. Kind of similar to like a Business Insider or something like that.
Yeah, I would say the arc is very similar. I think Business Insider might have had a little earlier head start, but otherwise very similar. But I would say the difference being that I think we're a little bit more esoteric in our, like, the content that we service, right? We're going down to the granular stock by stock level, and Business Insider, you know, has largely stayed up. I don't want to say above the fray, because it's not like it's any worse or better, but they focused on much larger personal finance themes and markets themes, as opposed to really, you know, part of what we're trying to do is service that individual investor and trader. And they can't make they can't make a decision based upon just what a central banker says. They need to know what individual stocks do, how they move, what the fundamentals of the company are saying, and that's kind of where we carved out a little bit of a niche.
Yeah, the Business Insider is definitely more of a general business kind of publication at this point. So, take us to 2022. Like, did you apply for a job? Did they approach you? What was kind of the pitch for why they needed? Had they ever had a chief content officer before? What was the pitch?
They had not. There was no prior chief content officer to speak of. There were leaders of the content organization, who wore a couple different hats. And I had been speaking with Benzinga for quite some time. So I had spoken with the senior leadership, over the course of the business. It's a small industry, right? Financial media, you tend to know, everyone I used to work with at Bloomberg, Seeking Alpha, and others, I see everywhere else. And so we all kind of know each other, and they had that opportunity, and it was something that it was rather appealing to me to kind of help lead the charge, kind of adjust and restructure the team somewhat. I had the opportunity to kind of make a lot of change, because in many cases it was fast growing, and when you grow rather quickly, there are things that were missed that need to probably be buttoned up, and there's also opportunity for growth and hiring and upskilling wherever that happens to be.
What was kind of the overarching thesis of a chief content officer there in terms of like what Benzinga needed to do? Was it like, obviously content now doesn't just live on a website. I saw that you guys have active on like Instagram and Twitter, and you have like a YouTube channel and stuff like that. Was it like you needed to kind of create more of kind of a decentralized like distribution strategy, or what was kind of the thing that they needed you to take Benzinga to the next level?
Well, it's not a knock against any of the pre-existing structure, but there was a little bit of a siloing that happened across the very business units you're talking about: videos, social media, web, and then also our breaking news wire. I don't want to say I was unique. I think there are several people in the industry who have very similar backgrounds, but I started my career in more of a breaking news wire fashion, this very short, headline only, actionable, tradable information. Moved into more of the web, very scrutinizing audience, terminal kind of element where you had to speak to very professional investors. And then I had an experience that was more mass market at Seeking Alpha, which is more of that web product. And so given the fact that there were people who had various levels of experience in each one of these areas, there was no one who had kind of within the company at the time had that bird's eye view to kind of bring all of those together. And in many cases, we had video that was more of a service provider to areas of the business. Social media was a service provider to other areas of the business, but they weren't really cohesively linked to the content that we were producing. And so you had a lot of different businesses doing a lot of different things, where my goal was to kind of bring everything together so that if we were writing about a particular item, or we had an exclusive and an interview, that interview was surfaced in all the different customer touch points that we had available to us, as opposed to our videos team and our shows team just doing their morning show, and that stayed over there, and we didn't talk about it on the web, or there was an opportunity that was surfaced in one of our shows that we didn't help inform the rest of our audience about. Similarly with newsletters, there wasn't really much of a newsletter strategy at the time, and now we have one. So just trying to bring all of those customer touch points together in some cohesive strategy, rather than individual business units. We have a performance and lead gen business as well, kind of running and doing their own thing without kind of Benzinga speaking as one voice.
Yeah, and I did see that it's on Beehive, and I'm interested in hearing about that and what your newsletter strategy is. But underneath you, what is the size of the content team, and how is it roughly structured? And by that I mean like more traditional journalists who are just writing stuff for the website versus a video or audio team versus like people who are like thinking about social strategy. Like, how large is it, and what's kind of like the breakdown of skill sets that it has?
Yeah, I mean, we're several hundred people, at the company. A large majority of those are within content. Are one of the things that appealed to me to join Benzinga, and it's not a knock against Bloomberg, but it's common knowledge across most people that when you're at Bloomberg News, you don't own your own content. Bloomberg, the core team owns what you do because they are ultimately a data company. People think of Bloomberg as a news organization, and look, it's a large one, 2,800 people. But at the same time, Bloomberg is at its core a data company. Benzinga, we do a lot of content. Everything we do is oriented around that content, and we have different distribution channels that service that. But in terms of the breakdown, yeah, we have an entire social media team where we have our lead, our head of social. He has several individuals that are managing individual handles. We have experts in Instagram, experts on X, and experts on LinkedIn, Threads, and TikTok. And they're working, what I've recently done is kind of brought them closer together with the video team because of how I think my view is how important video and graphics are becoming in that social experience. At the outset, when I kind of took over here, I didn't have a whole lot of oversight in that area. But what we were effectively doing, we're just putting up text posts or sharing an article link, and that was the extent of it. But that doesn't work across all the different platforms, and so it was necessary for us to build out an entire social media team to take on each platform individually based upon its individual strategy. And yeah, we have dedicated newsletter team, and our like you were asking about whether we have people who are just writing for the web. Our web team is discrete, right? That's their entire job. And when our Newswire, our Benzinga Pro team, that is an individualized team as well, and their entire expertise is around news gathering and speed. Although our web content will appear on our Pro team is its own entity, and then our web team, they are specialists in understanding, what's trending, what do we have to get in front of, how do we tailor a headline or a story around what our mass market audience is interested in, and then our news desk and our Pro team, they're more dedicated to, what's going to move the stock in this second, and how do we deliver a headline accordingly.
Yeah. So let's start by talking about your website, and then we'll move on to some of the other properties like, the YouTube and social and the newsletter and stuff like that. But like in terms of your like more traditional newsroom, what is it like? Mostly just kind of following what's happening at stocks and stuff like that on like a day-to-day basis. Are they any of them writing like longer features, or is this really kind of like this is happening right now and maybe we'll go and get a quote from an analyst or something like that, but we're really just kind of creating content that is like very relevant, but may lose its relevance very quickly, kind of thing?
It's very much in the now. I would say 80 to 90% of what we're doing is writing about everything that's in the now, whether that's directly from regulatory filings, whether that's directly from a pundit who's either speaking to us directly or somewhere else. And then we do probably, I'd estimate about 10% of our content is featurey, right? So when you have the Trump accounts that were launched, or when you talk about any sort of new policy, that the big beautiful bill or new credit card policy, we'll do explainers, we'll do step back pieces where we kind of look under the surface a little bit more and detail how it affects your wallet ultimately. But it's very much in the now, and markets are moving quickly. We have to jump on top of trends before they're trends. Nuclear stocks, right, as picks and shovels plays for the AI innovation. Space stocks, we're all over kind of where Wall Street is looking next. We're trying to look around the corner wherever we can, but it's very much real time. We have a component, a personal finance component of what we do, which is where we'll typically talk about business success stories or kind of any typical a quote that will help you in your journey to saving, so that you can be that smarter investor long term. Whether it's Warren Buffett or any Charlie Munger comment that I may have said many times in the past. So there's that smaller component of what we do as well. But the bread and butter is chronicling what's happening at the moment.
Yeah. And so like on the free content, I notice there's like a very high programmatic ad load on that. So like a lot of that content you're monetizing through people just coming to the like refreshing the web page or coming through like side doors and Google and social media and stuff like that.
Yeah, how we've set up our kind of subscription model is, as you go up the chain, right, you get a much better experience. There are many people who come to our site and they want to read that one piece of content and then they leave, and that's okay. We're okay with people stopping by and trying to read it. And yes, advertising is kind of a necessary, I don't want to call it evil, but it's a necessary component of the business model. And so, there's a very large chunk of users who will come back that way. If you subscribe to Benzinga Edge, which we feel like is a very affordable product, you don't have that experience. It's an ad light. Very few ads on the page, if anything. If anything, it's going to be touting things that are very native to what you'd want to experience, whether it's details about the subscription that you have and what's accessible to you, teaching you about that, teaching you about Benzinga Pro, offering webinars to any number of our gurus who have their own services. But ultimately, Edge is that ad light experience, and it also unlocks a host of other data that's available to users who are subscribers and not necessarily just passersby.
Yeah, like YouTube and Spotify have built huge businesses by basically just annoying their users with ads and getting into the point where they get like I subscribe to YouTube Premium, and it's, even though I'm getting content that would otherwise be for free, it's like one of my things I'm most loyal to as a subscriber is just getting rid of those ads. Do you kind of think of it as like an actual real subscription driver for like the Edge product?
So I don't view, I think the closest analog that comes to mind is this controlled obsolescence or planned obsolescence, where, all these different technology providers will create this friction in the experience to force you to upgrade to the newest and best device. I don't view ads as like a mechanism of force to drive people to subscribe, but it's just a nature of the game. And although being ad light is part of the feature set of Edge, we like to lean on more of the other data sets that are available to you as a reason why you want to subscribe. Because if you are serious about investing, then you want access to those data sets. And it just so happens that if you're going to need access to those data sets and view that on our site, you're probably going to want to have a much smoother experience and not want to be interrupted by all of these other things. But if you're not interested in those types of things, and like I said, if you just want to be a passersby, then that's okay too. But unfortunately, we're going to have to defray some of the cost of serving that. And I would say most publishers don't necessarily make money off of advertising. It's just more about how do you defray some of the costs of providing the service.
How much does an Edge subscription cost?
Depending upon when you can purchase it, it's anywhere from, I think it's about $10 a month.
Yeah. And is that your main consumer focused facing subscription product? Like, I know you also license to larger companies and stuff like that, but if I'm just someone working on Wall Street or a day trader or something like that, is that the main thing that I can pay to subscribe to?
That's our mass market product. I think that's more appropriate for many people in the market, delivering just about everything that you would possibly need to make smarter decisions, not day trading decisions, but smarter multi-week decisions about how you want to orient your portfolio and maybe even dabble in a couple of stocks. The other products we have are like kind of stock picking services, where we have some experts that will try to guide you through that journey, whether it's learning about options or some stock picks. But then like our higher end product is Benzinga Pro, and that's we actually have a very large investor base there, but that subscription ranges from $130 to $190 a month. So much more expensive product, but for people who really need that kind of real-time information, it's worth it. And frankly, if you want to be popular at the cocktail party and know what happened that day, that's probably the service for you. But not everybody wants to spend $150 a month for that.
And that's a product I can just sign up for by going on the website. I don't have to go through any kind of salesperson or something like that for the Pro as well.
That's right. You can sign up direct, but we do have white glove service to help people kind of understand how to use the platform in the way that they want to use it. Right. Most day traders have all sorts of different strategies, whether you're a swing trader or you like to scalp or whatever. We have the terminal is set up to handle any number of those strategies.
So for the edge, like what is the main benefit other than the light ad experience? Like, is it just a metered paywall where if you visit enough times, it's like, okay, now you have to pay? Or is there like specific stuff that you're locking behind where you can only get access with an edge account?
Yeah, there's a lot of data that that is locked, and a lot of it surrounds our proprietary analyst rating system, where we have taken a look at the history of Wall Street analysts and how successful they are in making calls. What calls are being made in many cases, that's also behind the paywall. We have a couple different calendars related to earnings that we want to make sure that you're at least a registered user before you're using that. And so that gives you access to what Wall Street thinks a company is going to report that quarter or that year, and how they're expected to guide. We also have a couple of proprietary data sets. We have a former hedge fund trader writes our piece called Stock of the Day, where every day he gives you his view on where he thinks his particular hot stock might go. We also have what we call our Stock Whisper Index, which is our own proprietary data set, where we discuss the stocks that, as we put it, people are looking for, but they're not yet talking about. And that data set, we usually talk about the story behind a lot of those names that we like to surface in that index. But in many cases, those stocks are prone for some sort of move in the coming days, whether that's positive or negative. And so, those are some of the kind of exclusive types of pieces of content that we provide. And there's also, we do a lot of analysis over insider trades, so all the transactions that executives are making, in addition to government trades, which, if Congress is truly serious about it, that product will probably go away, and the value of servicing that. But we do a lot of coverage around, what individual senators and representatives are doing.
Yeah, so like you named a bunch of information products. What about just straight up articles? Like, are there articles that appear only behind the paywall and are not available in the front?
Yeah, the Stock of the Day is one of those articles. The Stock Whisper Index is one of those articles as well.
Yeah, and then okay, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, and then if I don't want to pay, can I just continually keep on visiting Benzinga? Sorry, I don't want to. It's free content. Or will a meter finally hit and say, no, you need to pay now if you want to continue accessing?
There will be a meter that will ask you to register or pay. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so then that was the edge. So what is the benefit of the $150 a month like pro account? Like what other stuff do you get for that?
It's much more comprehensive. So you're getting, for Benzinga Pro, you're talking about scanner tools. So that's kind of one of the main feature sets that people really enjoy besides our news feed. But those allow you to kind of jump on top of different stocks that are moving with all sorts of different signals that we've deemed to be of note for active investors, whether it's volume, whether it's options activity. We have a couple other products layered on top of that where you get even more options transparency, so you can kind of understand where some of the smart money is moving. Much more granular data as it pertains to earnings estimates, analyst decisions. We have our Squawk product, which is our audio service. So whereas the news feed is a very headline only content feed, our audio Squawk service is that kind of filtered and much faster delivery of information. So as news is breaking, you are hearing it faster than anyone is writing it. And so a Squawk is our big differentiator. And also the news service is just much, much faster. So you would, on average, you're probably getting 10 times the volume of information on Pro as you would on the web.
And how much of a gap is there between like a pro account and like a Bloomberg terminal? Like I'm always fascinated at these companies that are trying to chip away at the Bloomberg terminal's like dominance, or like, and I, as someone who's never used a Bloomberg terminal and don't work on Wall Street, I can't even really conceptualize like how much value it adds. Like is can you pitch like pro as like a Bloomberg terminal replacement, or are they just like operating in completely different atmospheres?
Yeah, I'm not going to be one of these people who goes on any show and say we have a Bloomberg killer. I've been hearing that trope for 20 years. I think there were any number of companies, like I think it was either, I think Symphony it was called, or there were many others that tried to emulate that, and some of them had great backing. They had backing from some of the biggest names on the street. I think Goldman backed a few of these Bloomberg killers in the past, just to sprinkle in their investments, just to see what would happen. But we're not a Bloomberg killer, right? The Bloomberg is used for any number of purposes, right? I think one of Bloomberg's biggest growth levers in the past several years is diversifying away from Wall Street and towards law and towards finance individuals who just want to run numbers more effectively using the data sets that Bloomberg has. Bloomberg bought I think it was the Barclays bond indices, and they're just a massive data provider, and that's granularity on time and sales of trading, and you can actually you're trading through the platform, and they have their like trade book. It's a world of difference, and it pains me every time I see someone claim to be the Bloomberg killer, because it just shows there's this ignorance around what actually Bloomberg services. We are more designed for that active investor. In many cases, people they'll have a terminal, and they'll also have us. And it just really depends on the user. But I think we are designed to be what people think of when they think of a Bloomberg terminal. We kind of service most of what people may need, but ultimately Bloomberg as a product is, for the people who are paying for it, is much more than just real-time news and a couple data feeds and understanding how your portfolio works together and surfacing opportunities. But that's that's my kind of mini rant there. And I think even another trope I think that's been routinely trotted out is around the fact that 98% of every Bloomberg user, of all Bloomberg users, use less than 4% of its functionality. But because of how disparate the use cases are, those could be very different 3 or 4% that everyone is using.
How much is your reporting team scoop driven versus being more analysis driven?
It's a good question. It depends, I guess. Like our web team is trying to push a lot more into the exclusive territory, where we're not relying on some of the commoditized sources of information. Those are table stakes at this point, trying to go to all these publicly available pieces of information. But now, our web team is focusing a lot more on building relationships and talking with executives and trying to kind of provide the view inside the room of a lot of these businesses to help investors kind of understand what's behind the curtain. But our breaking news team is all about the speed, and so we do have access to a lot of exclusive information. There are often our sources will come to us and say, we will, we have this piece of information we want to share with you, and we will scoop a lot of the competition, and that is of interest to a lot of our customers, both licensing and on the public side. So I can't really give you percentages about like how much they're focused. Our news desk team has to cover everything that's happening in the market, so it's not like I can pull them away from something else to be more scoop driven or more exclusives driven than anything else. But we're always on the hunt for exclusive information to drive kind of awareness, and get our content shared across the ecosystem.
Yeah. Speaking of getting your content shared, I noticed with like Instagram, but even like Twitter and stuff like that, like your social team is like preparing these graphics that very kind of concisely explain news, and then maybe having a little bit more information in the caption, but it's not designed, or at least it seems to me, to like drive traffic by the website. Like, how do you think about social media, especially now that it's becoming less link driven, as like how it fits into your content operations and your kind of KPIs and stuff like that, of that, like what the goals that you're trying to achieve for? Like, is it just like a branding opportunity so that people are more aware of your company, so they're more likely to seek out its other products? Or how do you think about social media?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a struggle, I think, for a lot of publishers, is this kind of push towards, why can't we bring that social community back to our website? I've taken more of I've kind of stopped harping on that idea over the past several years, just because you're pushing on a string, right? I can tell my team till I'm blue in the face that they need to include more links and drive more clickbacks, but ultimately the more they do that, the less their internal KPIs that I've set will perform. I think we're leaning into social media as more of like a marketing play, getting that brand out there, making sure that people trust and see us, and that ultimately they will hopefully find value in the things that we're doing, and they'll want to use some of our edge tools, right? We have portfolio watching, and we'll even run analyses on your portfolio to help you kind of understand where you sit in on the competitive scale, and we just want to just build that trust with the audience. I think as a media operator, trust is kind of one of those bigger elephants in the room that's facing our industry, and the more we can get in front of people and just kind of tell you, look, we're here as a support, we're here to help you provide information, we're not asking for anything in return, but the more you see us, hopefully you come to trust us and lean on us, that we're not some like abstract monolith, and we're approachable, we're talking about the same things that you want to talk about. So I'm not viewing social media as any sort of like traffic driver. It's just a necessary part of all of our customer touch points.
And then with video, what are you doing there? Like, I looked at the Instagram. I maybe I missed it, but I didn't really see a lot of recent interview video. I looked at the YouTube. It looks like there's like basically kind of like a very kind of low production daily markets show. So, but it's not. You're not. It didn't look like you were taking like big swings and doing like highly produced video. What's your kind of video output, and how do you think about like how video fits into your business?
Yeah, I think we're approaching it from a couple different angles. The morning show is very, very much designed to be an accompaniment for Benzinga Pro, right? It's if you're tuning in at that hour, ahead of the market open, you want to know what's happening with all these stocks in the pre-market. What are the prevailing themes of the day? And so, we have one of our individuals who kind of has lived and breathed Benzinga Pro for almost as long as it's existed, who's there kind of guiding people through how to use the platform and how to take advantage of what's going on in that day. So it's very much serves as an accompaniment. It's not there for a bunch of pomp and circumstance or or fanfare. It's very much a community-driven show where there's a lot of back and forth between the audience. People are asking questions, what they should look for, how should they find new opportunities, and the team, they're both kind of traders there, are designed to kind of help that in that endeavor. We also have a weekly show now called The Drift, which is we're partnering with Adam Mesh and Tom Sosnoff. Tom Sosnoff was the founder of Tasty Trade, and is kind of a legend in like kind of the brokerage trading community. And Adam and Tom will talk for about an hour. It's much more of an approachable show, someone who could kind of tune in for. There's no time sensitivity associated with that show. It's more of let's talk about the major themes in the market and how you should be thinking about trading and investing broadly. Tom, I think, just recently talked about the SpaceX IPO and what you should know there, and his expectation about whether the share price was going to continue to rise or to fall dramatically, and turns out that he was correct. But it depends. Everyone's forecasts have a time expiry, right? And so people can be right immediately, or they can be right. It may take 20 to 30 years, like people who bought Cisco way back in the day. But that's kind of one of our shows. And then we also try to do more of an explainer clips throughout the day that we'll post on YouTube and across all the other video native social platforms. So any of the bigger news, will walk someone through what's happening. And that's a little bit more of a production value than our morning show, which is just kind of a daily update around what you need to know that day.
So just rapid fire to kind of go through some of the stuff you're talking about. So the daily show, that's mainly like a benefit for the paid subscribers that are going to tune in live, and then you're taking a recording of that and just throwing it on YouTube to maybe get some additional audience, or how are you thinking? How is that?
We have a separate team who's producing kind of explainers about different individual concepts that happened that day. that stuff is going out on our shorts part of
No. I mean, I was talking about the first thing you were talking about, where you
Oh.
just have like an analyst like every morning who, for your pro subscribers, there's just kind of walking you through stuff. I assume that was what you were referencing, was kind of like the daily thing that's going up on your
That's
YouTube channel.
our breaking news, several hours every morning, and we'll take clips from that to the extent that it's relevant and reshare.
Yeah, and put it there. And then you are putting it like sounds like a slightly more produced like podcast like show that's going out once a week. Is that only to pro subscribers, or is that going?
That's available to everyone, and it's designed to be more mass market. I mean, even the morning show is available to everybody. It's just the people who are going to benefit are probably going to be the people who are more actively involved in trading.
For that weekly show, are you monetizing that directly by trying? Do you have like an ad team that's trying to sell into that?
We have a title sponsor for that. Yeah.
Okay, and that's also like a podcast that goes out in like an audio version as well, or is it only video?
Yeah, I think we're looking to do more on that podcast side. But right now, I think most of our content will go out in all the major distribution channels.
Yeah, and then then the final thing you were talking about, the short form kind of explainer videos. Is that like someone's on your social team that's like rolling up to someone in the newsroom and is like pulling them aside for like 5 minutes and being like talking to the camera, and then they're editing that together into like some kind of explainer, or what's kind of the workflow for those?
They will work with our journalists about the stories, but ultimately it is a member of our social media team who's producing all of those.
Yeah, and I don't know if you caught this, but Joe Kahn just did a interview where he talked about how they're radically reforming the New York Times newsroom to be more kind of video centric, where every piece of journalism has some kind of video component, where they are literally just kind of, all right, you finish writing your article, you publish your article, now you're sitting down with our social media team and we're going to interview you really quickly, because this also needs to exist as like a clip that's going on TikTok or Instagram Reels. Is that kind of the approach there that you're kind of taking?
A little bit. It's funny that's kind of picking up steam now. It's something that in various forms has been discussed at the places that I've been over the last 10 years. We've been talking about, when someone writes it, we're going to put a camera on their face. But ultimately, like, that's not, it's very difficult for that to be scalable. Not everybody should be in front of the camera. Like, first and foremost, not everybody wants to be in front of the camera. And then, how much legwork is involved in doing those types of things. And I think Vox has done a great job with their explainer series, but guess what, those are much more well produced, and you have a team, proper scripting, proper production, to do the volume of video journalism that's necessary for the New York Times and others. It's tough, to be determined, I guess, is my answer there. But we're basically just trying to find, our social media they're ingesting all sorts of ideas and metrics around what they should be producing content around, and so ultimately they will seize upon a topic that they think is of importance, and they'll re-script basically on the source material. They'll take it, they'll do an explainer, and they'll get that out there for the people who want to consume their information that way.
Yeah. So obviously every news organization has some kind of newsletter sign up form. For the most part, you sign up for that newsletter and it's just like sometimes mostly an automated email that's like, here's the headlines, and people are supposed to click through to the website. I saw that you have a Beehive newsletter that's hosted on Beehive, and it looks like something more deliberately as like a newsletter product that's mainly meant to be consumed in the inbox. Am I right in thinking that? And can you kind of talk about the strategy you're doing with that newsletter?
Yeah, so we have actually quite a few free newsletters. Ring the Bell is our flagship. That's where that can be consumed by itself almost, right? And it gets to your inbox at 7 a.m., talks about what happened in the market over the past 24 hours. It gives you snapshots of major indices and major stock movers. We add our own color to what's happening in the marketplace. It's not just a collection of links. We will point out different stories that we think might be of interest to people. We also have an engaging daily quiz that we help run through that newsletter. So it's designed for our newsletter audience to participate. It's not only available to our newsletter audience, but that's one of the main levers that we utilize. And so we want to get people to come to the site. We do $500 prizes for that quiz, in addition to all the products. You could win Edge, pro subscriptions, all that kind of stuff, just by participating each week. And but yeah, like our newsletter is basically there to be consumed almost entirely within the newsletter. Now we provide, our main story of the day. If you want to get more than the blurb that we provide, obviously you're welcome to click through to the email, but it's by no means an automated strategy. It's very human curated. We also want to surface webinars that people can attend, and other informational resources. So that's the flagship. We also have a crypto and prediction markets oriented newsletter called Future of Finance. We also have a kind of a stock tip oriented newsletter called Research Daily. And those are kind of like the main. We also have a tech trends newsletter for people who are interested in technology, kind of on the cutting edge, what's going on with robotics and AI. So all sorts of different free newsletters. None of those are paid. That's kind of how we're leaning into it.
And it looks like there's some like kind of less programmatic, more kind of native ads that are at least in the one newsletter I saw, like had like some kind of title sponsor or something like that.
Yeah. Those are all direct relationships, and we also surface, like I said, some webinars that we'll do internally for people to learn more about the platforms or learn more about investing. Whether that's run from one of our advertising partners or whether it's run internally, we do both.
And like in terms of who's assigned to run those newsletters, is it just like part of a marketing team that's putting it together, or is there like a solo author or something that's like in charge of?
Yeah, it's editorially run. So all of our newsletters are run by an editorial individual who's responsible for that newsletter. They will coordinate logistics with our ads team, depending upon the placements and the relationships that were formed there. But ultimately, all of the content and structure is editorially run.
Yeah, and is it like, do they have like full discretion in terms of like what they decide? Whoever's assigned to that newsletter, like, because there's this kind of like thinking. You see this at like Politico and the New York Times to a certain extent, that you run these newsletters almost like you're almost like a showrunner, because like in some way, large portion of your audience, like that's how that's their entire interface with your content, is like the newsletter is basically the new homepage. So like what's kind of the level of importance of the editor versus like how much direction they're taking from the more kind of traditional newsroom editors and stuff like that. Does that question kind of make sense in terms of
it does. I've always felt like the person who's running the newsletter should be the person running the newsletter. They are most in tune with the audience. They're looking at the click heat maps. They're looking at the click-through rates. They're the ones who are A/B testing subject lines. They're the ones who are watching unsubscribe rates. They understand the newsletter audience better. And because of the number of customer touch points that we have, there is no one size fits all, right? So the people who are reading content on the web, and we produce content 24 hours a day, it's a very, very, we could take the best performing content in the last 24 hours and it might fall flat with the newsletter audience. And so I take that seriously in giving them a lot of, runway to produce it. Obviously within reason, right? We have people who are editing the newsletter. It's not just, free run of it. Whoever's writing it also has to go through an editor, and we will routinely kind of audit different elements of the newsletter, from on high, and understand whether that still kind of fits our core goals of the business. But yeah, I don't believe in necessarily having my managing editors or other ones pushing or dictating what should go in that newsletter. But there's a collegiality and cooperation where the newsletter individuals are open to pitches, and we'll take a look at what's performing the best.
And then what's the event strategy? Like, are you doing like one big annual conference a year? Or are you doing just tons of small events? And then how much is the content team kind of responsible for basically doing the programming for that stuff? The answer to that question has changed over the last 4 years. We used to do a lot more events. Right now, what I've found, at least from my perch, is that from an events perspective, as a B to C oriented company, I mean, we're B to B to C and B to C, right? So most of our partners are
companies who then are also servicing their end users who are consumers of our content and data. I think as a media company, it's interesting because you can look at B2B publications which have a much stronger success in delivering larger audiences and a much more dynamic experience. Because they're B2B, the audiences are, I don't want to say of higher value. I don't want to diminish the B2C person, but if the people who are attending your audiences are people who control purse strings, automatically your conferences become higher value to the people who want to get in front of the people who control the purse strings. For media organizations, even CNBC or some smaller outlets that are overseas, what I've noticed with some of their campaigns is trying to put on a conference that's B2C oriented, appealing to a retail investor. It's a little bit of a different animal. So what we're doing predominantly is, we're doing one event. We've done this FinTech Awards Day for, I think we're on our 11th or 12th year now, where we bring together all sorts of individuals, right? We have people in the advertising world, we have people in the brokerage world, we have people in the investing world. We try to bring them all together. We have a content calendar or a content program typically every year where we talk about some of the prevailing themes that are impacting investing and impacting the very businesses that underlie that. So, whether it was last year, we obviously had to talk about AI and brokerage. We had to talk about prediction markets. And so we had, some of the top prediction markets individuals who were at that conference. We had some personal finance, how AI was impacting some of those elements. So we were talking, even though we are a B2C publication predominantly, our relationships and what we're talking about at our conferences are typically more B2B. Right now, each year, we typically will have one big awards day as opposed to a series of smaller events. But we do, customer appreciation and other types of gatherings throughout the year.
And that one big thing is primarily FinTech oriented?
Yeah, and we call it our FinTech Deal Day, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And that's kind of tickets. So, obviously, awards have their own kind of business model of the submit yourself for the award is some kind of fee. And you can buy a table at the award ceremony. I'm assuming it's all that, sponsorships, tickets, and vendors and stuff like that.
There was some element of that existed in the past. Last year we were selling tickets. This year it's a little different. We're not going to be. It's going to be more of a kind of an. I don't want to sound haughty-taughty, but it's more of going to be an invite only. And the events are the awards are going to be third party. There's going to be a lot more, I guess, due diligence on the awards side of things, and it'll be kind of outside of our hands more so than in times past. There will be less of this self-nominating activity, right, that you're kind of referring to, and so I think it's designed to be more like an awards show that is, I don't know, cleaner, I guess. Less of this kind of buying a table and nominating and paying for, all this kind of other stuff. It's going to be more just, these are the players. These are some of the best products that we're seeing. These are some of the newest products on the market that we think are worth talking about, and otherwise, yeah.
And then monetize primarily through sponsors?
Sponsors, yeah. But mostly it's going to be, mostly we're funding it, so.
Okay, yeah, so you see it as more of a brand building thing then?
Brand building, relationships, and obviously I think we're going to have a decent amount of content that comes out of that as well.
Yeah. So just to kind of very quickly run through the business models here, and I just want to do this just in case I'm missing something. So there's the kind of B2C free content that's primarily monetized through programmatic advertising, but then also some video, more kind of title sponsor kind of advertising that's going on, like your show and stuff like that. So there's the advertising component. There's the Edge subscription, which is kind of like a more low cost subscription that's like $10 a month. There's the Pro subscription that's $150 a month or whatever it happens to be when you're doing that sale. There's, I think you didn't talk much about this, but there's you have some kind of all kinds of licensing deals, I'm guessing, with various firms that want your data and information into them. That's correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Were there any other things and then the events to a certain extent, or was there anything else I'm missing?
Probably, but it's a lot. There are a lot of different business models in play. Our revenue streams are very diversified, which I think puts us in a very, very different publisher category than many.
Yeah. And so looking ahead the next few years, especially how the landscape is changing with like links become, platforms sending less traffic, obviously the rise of AI, kind of video and podcasts getting some increased importance. What do you want to invest in, or what would you love to be doing a year or 2 or 3 years from now that you're not doing today? Like, would you like to be producing like full length documentaries like Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal are doing for YouTube? Or do you think that would be like a large waste of money? What would you like to invest in?
So I like to stay very pragmatic. I mean, there are always these moonshots that we have in mind, and we'll keep doing some of them from time to time. But we like to experiment a little bit to see what works, and then we'll invest a little bit more. So, I mean, do I want to be doing mass documentaries, and kind of finding the 72-year-old wreckage at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, like the Discovery just did with the Pan Am flight? No, or do I want to do these massive exposés? I don't think that's really in the cards. Partly because our audience is our audience, and our audience, I like to stay focused on what they want to read and how we're discovering them. The data that I get to see from my perch tells me a lot about the type of reader who's finding us through an aggregator app is much different than the type of reader who finds us through Google or through some of our brokerage platforms. And so I need to weigh the value of all of those types of content and where we like to invest. I think video is going to continue to be a necessity. I think AI is going to help tremendously there in terms of expediting the time of production, the production value. When I think about AI, I think about it as kind of an expediter. I don't think it as a way to replace anyone, partially because no one owns AI, right? Everyone has access to AI. Everyone's going to be using AI. So I don't understand how there's going to, immediately right now, how there's going to be this mass, everyone's just going to disappear, because all these businesses all have to compete, and we're all going to be continuing to compete. And so I think it's going to be a lot murkier of a story with AI investment, but I'm ultimately using it as a way to help our team investigate faster, pull together, information that's unique to ourselves, and putting that in some sort of packageable way that our audience appreciates. And then also using it, extensively on the audio video side, where I think that's traditionally been a very expensive format to produce. You need all sorts of experienced individuals and video production and graphics and editing. And I think AI is going to probably be the highest value use case in that area. But yeah, I think we have to go where the audience is, and so that's. Video is kind of a necessary part of that. It's still expensive to produce, right? It's you want to make sure the script is right. You want to make sure that you don't bumble over your words. You want to make sure that you can deliver something of high enough quality, but and you don't really get a whole lot back for what you produce. So I think the graveyard is full of businesses who've tried to invest in video and monetize it, and even the biggest players in the world are struggling to make a lot of money from it. Is that the only goal? No, but what we're trying to do is just develop the video to help as an accompaniment to the rest of the content that we produce. But I think just talking to more executives, peeling back the layers for investors more so that they understand how stocks are really moving, that's where I feel like we still need to invest the most.
Okay, Brad, those were all the questions I had for you. Where can people find you online?
I'm on LinkedIn. My last name is spelled strangely, Olesen, and Brad is the typical spelling. But I'm on LinkedIn, and you can find me, on Benzinga. So
awesome. Well, this is a lot of fun. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Simon. Love being here.